everyone, on today's Bible study we'll be looking at living by instructions part 2. To live by instructions is very important to help us navigate through life. However, it is also important to be sure that the instructions you are acting by is what God is telling you to do at that very time. So some days ago, God instructed me to buy a particular bread which I assumed was 400 naira. But on asking for the price of the bread, I discovered it was 500 naira. And all the cash I had with me at that moment was 400 naira. So with my human instinct, I decided to buy a lesser bread, which I did. Then after buying the bread, I went ahead to withdraw money from the POS. Then I started going my way. But while I was still on my way, God instructed me to go back and exchange the smaller bread for the exact bread He asked me to buy, which I did. And while still on my way, instructed me to give it out to someone. God is very specific in the instructions He gives. Sometimes when He gives us instructions, we try to modify the instructions or do extra. But that your extra doesn't count in the eyes of God. What counts is doing exactly what He has instructed you to do. Let your hearts always be tuned to receive instructions from God. The scriptural examples we'll be using are in Exodus 17 and Numbers 20. In Exodus 17, Moses, while leading the children of Israelites in the wilderness, they got to a particular point where there was no water. So they cried out to Moses that they were thirsty. So Moses spoke to God about it. And God instructed Moses to smite the rock in Horeb with his rod, and it would bring forth water for them to drink, which Moses did, and they all drank from the water. So similar experience happened in Numbers 20. In Numbers 20, the children of Israel complained that they needed water to drink. So Moses spoke to God about it. And when he spoke to God about it, this time around, God instructed Moses to speak to the rock and it would bring forth water. But when Moses wanted to act on the word of the Lord, he struck the rock with his rod instead. And the rock still brought out water. But the thing is that Moses did not act according to the instructions of the Lord. And because of that, God said He's not going to make it into the promised land, which He did not. The key lesson from this story is that because God gave you an instruction to address a particular situation a certain way, does not mean you can always address similar situation using that same method. Moses, because he had previous issue of the children of Israel complaining about water, in which God instructed him to strike the rock with his rod, followed that same pattern when similar issue came up, ignoring the instructions that came from God to speak to the rock, but instead he struck the rock with his rod, and water still came out from the rock. Sometimes we can do contrary to the instructions of God, and we will still see results. But sometimes we mistake that result as approval from God. When you don't act according to the instructions of God, no matter how good the result you are getting looks, it does not count in the eyes of God. Always keep your heart tuned to hear the instructions of God and live by it. God bless you. See you guys next week. Bye guys.